Welcome to the Joy of Cruising podcast with your host, award-winning author Paul C. Thornton, a weekly conversation with the amazing cruisers featured in the Joy of Cruising books, comprised of The Joy of Cruising, Cruising Interrupted, new release, The Joy of Cruising Again, as well as other fun, informative global cruise personalities. It's the next best thing to cruising, hearing about cruising from the unique and diverse perspectives of Paul's amazing guests. If you hear about a cruise that interests you, book it at www.thejoyoфvacation.com or enter to win a free cruise for two. Again, www.thejoyoфvacation.com. We really appreciate your feedback, so leave us a text. Paul can't reply, but he may read your text on the air.
Hello, passionate cruisers. This is Paul, and in my effort to portray cruising in all of its diversity, now for something completely different. This week on the Joy of Cruising podcast, I am delighted to welcome Cris Kostiuk, creator of Cris the Cruising Duckman. Let me preface by saying that for the most part, up until recently, I have been rather ambivalent toward the phenomenon of hiding and finding toy ducks on cruise ships. First of all, I assumed it would be a short-lived trend that would fade away. Wrong. Secondly, I kind of thought it was mainly for kids. And since I no longer have young children to cruise with, I have aged out of the target clientele. Wrong again. Cruising ship ducks are very much a kids and adults aspect of cruising. The tide started to change for me in terms of paying a little more attention to cruise ship duck mania when I began to read about this duck trend in non-cruise media. Then I read a blog post by arguably the top cruise blogger podcaster in the world, Matt Hochberg of Royal Caribbean blog, that opened my eyes. In a blog whose title seemingly was directed at me, hiding ducks on a cruise ship is a crazy and popular trend, whether you like it or not. Matt shared some information that put to rest any notion of cruise duck mania being a passing fad. For instance, did you know there's a Cruising Ducks Facebook group that is approaching 300,000 members? And Matt's blog also mentioned today's guest. By the way, I have linked to Matt's blog post in the show notes. What moved me to do a podcast about duck mania, though, were images of ducks that would regularly show up in my Facebook feed. These ducks were a far cry from dollar store ducks or ducks sold in bulk on Amazon. They were amazing, artistic, and intricate. You see, I was Facebook friends with Cris the Cruising Duckman, so I invited him on the show. After a catastrophic accident that Cris was fortunate to survive years ago, following his recovery, Cris formed a new outlook on life and decided to start traveling more, including his first cruise. Of course, he got hooked. On his second cruise, he took his kids and started learning about the duck trend. He got hooked on that too, to the point he purchased a 3D printer, which ultimately became 6 3D printers. Cris takes multiple large suitcases of ducks every cruise, and he has created a website, cruisecave.com, for selling his 3D printed ducks. Cris says, I love getting photos with people. I always try to get a photo with the captain and the cruise director giving them a duck. Welcome, Cris, the Cruising Duckman, to the Joy of Cruising podcast.
Thank you.
So how you doing?
As good as can be if I'm not on a cruise, I guess.
Well, I saw your Facebook post earlier today. You're getting ready to go on a whole lot of them. Good to virtually meet you. You know, I've seen your work. I'm staring at my Joy of Cruising duck right here in my podcasting area. Sometime before your episode airs, I'll take a picture of it and show you just where I have it and how prominent it is to my little podcast setup. Before we discuss your unique contribution to cruising, tell our listeners about yourself in general. Where you're from, where you live, your background growing up, and then as an adult, family, whatever you would like to share, Cris.
All right. Well, my actual name's Cris Kostiuk. I was born in Nebraska, pretty much grew up in Kansas, and then 7 years ago moved to Oklahoma and started my own little business. So I'm self-employed, and it allows me to do a handful of cruises a year, and didn't do a lot of cruises years ago. We talked about it for years, and my oldest child got motion sickness real bad. So we always kind of shied away from the cruise, even though it sounded like a great idea, but never got on board with taking the whole family. Coming out of COVID, I had gotten an email, and I want to say it was actually Carnival that emailed me an offer, super good deal. And I thought, I'll look into that. And I got online, looked, couldn't find a lot. Ended up looking at Royal Caribbean, found one that worked out perfect. Booked it on a Monday. My wife and I sailed the following Monday, so we didn't have much time to think about stuff and let it get in our heads. And we did it and had an amazing time and instantly got hooked. So that's kind of what our life has become now versus before it was all land-based vacations. And that led into the duck thing, which aspect of cruising that I didn't expect to get into, but it got a little carried away. So
now let me just stop you there. When you went on the first cruise, did you even were you even aware of, as you call it, the duck thing?
no, not at all. I don't even think at the end of our first cruise that we had even seen any. Our second cruise, because that was in December, our second one was in April, and we took my oldest, well, it'd be my daughter, she's my oldest child, and then we took my youngest boy. And sometime in the middle there, we seen on some other Facebook pages where about the duck thing and how it worked. And so we took a few, and we do spend a little.
You took a few for the second cruise? You took a few with you?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, took a few ducks with us for the second cruise. And my wife and I spend a fair amount of time in the casino, and I found that I would just leave the casino and go look for some ducks, and I was kind of intrigued by the idea of, all the walking I was doing and all the different parts of the ship that I didn't see on a regular basis because, it's just not in the area where I'd normally be going. And so I found it to be quite enjoyable. And then the next cruise, we took more and more. And eventually I ended up finding a 3D printed duck and got the idea that, hey, I want to buy a 3D printer. I know nothing about them at the time. Bought it, and
I don't know much about them at all, so I'm going to ask you in a minute. I'll ask you to give us a little tutorial on 3D printing. So, with your first experience, you found a duck that was 3D printed.
Yes, I want to say it was on like maybe my third cruise.
Okay. So okay, take us through the journey to become, from Cris Kostiuk to Cris the Cruising Duckman. It sounds like the journey really kind of got kicked off when you found the 3D printed duck.
Yes, it was kind of one of those. I got the idea. I wanted to 3D print some ducks and I got on Amazon. I bought a cheap printer that had decent reviews, and it took me a good month before I ever printed my first usable duck. And
now let me jump in. I'm sorry, Cris. You bought your first 3D printer. You didn't know anything. Did you research them before you bought it?
I reached out to a childhood friend of mine that's very tech savvy, and I asked him some suggestions. He gave me his opinion on a few. Ultimately, I didn't want to spend a bunch of money because I didn't know what I was getting into. And I kind of in the back of my mind thought maybe I was wasting money. It was a hobby that I wasn't going to pick up on. But it took me a while for the cheap one that I bought. It took me a while to figure it out. And once I did, I kind of got it fine-tuned. and started making a few ducks. And I think our next cruise after that, I took maybe 50 or 60 3D printed ducks.
Wow. Now,
And
if I may ask, what do you consider cheap in 3D printing in 3D printers, or at least a couple of years ago when you got into it?
my first 3D printer was around $170.
Oh wow! See, I
Um,
had no clue you could buy and you could probably buy one cheaper today. Um, I, I had no clue you could buy a
yes.
3D printer for that cheap. I just kind of assumed it's just never something I looked into. I'm relatively tech savvy, but I would have guessed they start around $400 or $500.
You definitely get what you pay for. That particular brand was kind of basic and bare bones, and took me a while to learn the tricks and kind of fine tune it. But once I did, I didn't touch stuff. I left it alone. I got just the same type of duck. I just kept repeating, and it was working great. And actually, my kids were. I overheard them one time talking to my wife about how they've never seen me so focused on one little hobby for so long. For I believe it was my birthday, my wife ended up buying me a much better 3D printer and significantly faster. Then I really picked up on the amount of ducks that I was making and taking on cruises. Um, I would say for the sheer amount that I take, it didn't really kick off until we did the inaugural for Icon. That's where I took, I think, about 700 or 800 ducks.
Wow. Now, to be honest with you, as we approach this episode, and we communicated some on email, so I had a little sense for your background. I kind of assumed that it was your kids who got hooked on the ducks, and you just kind of fell into it. It sounds like it bit you first, because your family was like, I know you didn't say this, said this, but like, what's up with that?
Well, as far as going and hunting and hiding ducks, I would go with my daughter, and like she seemed to get really excited about it.
Uh-huh.
And this is just going back a few years ago, and she's 22 now. But we would buy ducks randomly, Temu, Amazon. We'd buy them at Target, wherever we could find different types of ducks. We would take some so that we could have an assortment of different types. But as far as the 3D printing thing, that really elevated what I was doing, because I could add my own little twist to them. I could make the different designs, colors, what I wanted. And I mean, my daughter still loves to do it, but I would definitely say that my boys picked up on it a little bit too. My youngest, he's actually turned 18 on this next cruise in December we're taking. And he made fun of me at first, but then every now and then I'll hear him like, "Dad, let me have a few ducks to go hide." So they're definitely on board with it, but it's gotten to be a very expensive hobby.
You're making money on it. You've got your cruisecave.com. Tell our listeners about that.
Well, it was kind of an idea to. I had a lot of people that were always messaging me asking, if I could make them some ducks and send them. And my wife was kind of on me about, hey, like, try to cut back, try to, tell them, hey, we'll bring some on the ship and go that route. And I kind of come up with the idea of, why don't we just start a website? And then obviously for me, it's based on a lot of the ducks that I make, but we wanted to do all sorts of cruise related products, and it's still a work in progress. We're always trying to add new stuff to it. The different type of 3D printed ducks and duck related things that I make, we put on there. Well, at least the ones that aren't trademarked. We have, a lot of them that I give away on the ship will have different logos and stuff on them, so I can't sell those. But we've recently got into putting some shirts and stuff on there. We're trying to add more to it every day, but it is just a side hobby that is hopefully there to kind of help support the habit of giving away ducks on cruises.
Well, we'll come back to duck hiding and duck finding in a moment. Let's go back through your cruising history. Let's talk about your cruising background. And I understand it, unlike most of our listeners, correct me if I'm wrong, you started after the shutdown, right after the pandemic, right?
Yes, correct.
So when and what ship was your first cruise?
It was Serenade of the Seas out of Tampa, and we just went around Florida, went to Nassau, and came back. So it was a nice little short cruise. Prior to that, my wife and I's getaways were like taking a long weekend trip to Vegas or something, where we were always on the go. It seemed like no matter what we budgeted, we were always spending way over in Vegas. Just there was so much to do, and it was just always spending a lot of money. So when we did the cruise, one of the first things I noticed was, we stuck pretty close to our budget.
Right.
The idea that a cruise almost being all inclusive and you don't really have to spend any extra money, that was nice to know that. And we spend a little bit of time in the casino. Like I said before, we get a lot of casino or comped cruises. So that helps out the cruise schedule, I guess I'd say, but met a lot of really nice people. The ship on that one, I want to say, was 25 or 30% capacity at the time. And
the Serenade.
Yes, that was.
So that was right after the restart then.
Yes, that would have been December, somewhere around the first week of December, right after the restart. So was that 21, I believe?
Yes. I think it December 21. Because my first cruise after the restart was early in 22. So your first cruise, you got on the water before I got back on the water. You said you got hooked, which doesn't surprise me because most people that I talk to, almost all, get hooked on the first cruise. How soon before you cruised again?
April of 22. That was because my wife and I both.
Only a few months later.
Yeah, we didn't realize it at the time. We, like I said, we'd spent a little money in the casino, so right away within a month we had offers for cruises, and my wife and I both had one. We're like, hey, why don't we take the kids on the next one, let them experience it, and it was something that both the kids that went with us got hooked instantly. At this point, my oldest son, who was the one that we were hesitant about the motion sickness, he still hadn't gone. He actually did go on his first one this last summer in June to out of New York or New Jersey going to Bermuda, and now he is hooked.
How was the motion sickness?
He did have one day where he kind of asked if we had some the little patches to go behind the ear, but outside of that, he absolutely loved it, and he's booked on us again this coming summer. He's still in college, so he's just going during his summer break, and his one of his best friends is going with him, and they had a blast. He still talks about it almost daily. So my youngest boy loves it, but he doesn't get nearly as excited as my oldest or my daughter. So
now you have cruised quite a bit in a short period of time. Talk about some of your most memorable cruises.
Well, I mean, right off the top, going on the Icon inaugural was one of the best experiences I've had. Just all the I guess hype behind the Icon was amazing, and being able to be one of the first to sail on it. The amount of people I met on there, and I will say, actually, Icon is what was my tipping point to creating the name Cris the Cruising Duck Man. Like I said, we kicked off with hundreds and hundreds of ducks on that one, and I had a bunch of people that were wanting to add me on Facebook, and I like to keep my Facebook to just family because it always gets cluttered and I don't really care to be on it all that much. My wife had suggested that maybe I create a separate page for it. That way I can keep my cruising stuff separate. And I said, that's a great idea. Now I'm on Facebook all the time on my duck page. So it's been very enjoyable on that side of stuff. But when we did our Alaskan cruise, that was a huge adventure for us. Like everything about that was great to me.
What ship was that?
Alaska was on Quantum of the Seas.
Okay.
I personally am not a fan of Quantum of the Seas design, and being narrower like it is, it had a lot more movement. The itinerary was amazing. That is definitely on my bucket list to do again. However, my wife does not like the cold, and it was a little bit cool and breezy when we were there in September, so it hasn't been one we've put back on the schedule yet.
Yeah, we went to Alaska for the first time last year, and I'm not a big one for repeating destinations, but that's one that we know we're going back to.
We'll be right back.
The Joy of Cruising podcast guests receive a gift sponsored by GigSky of a 3 gigabyte cruise plus land data package valued at $60. Relying on ship Wi-Fi is slow, unsecure, and sometimes not available. And at foreign ports, travelers don't want to pay their carriers high fees. GigSky provides a solution that will save them a significant amount of money. To get your own data package usable on the ship or in ports, here is my link to GigSky. https://gigsky.pxf.io/NLOXOR. This can be found in the show notes below. For a 10% discount, use the code Joy of Cruising.
Definitely on my list. Now, the one my wife loved the most was the ABC cruise. Aruba was probably our single best day that we've ever had on a cruise itinerary, because we didn't plan to do anything actually and got off the ship to do some shopping, and there was somebody renting Jeeps, and we got the idea of, hey, let's rent a Jeep and just go explore the town. And we came back with some great souvenir sunburns because we weren't planning on doing anything. So we didn't put suntan lotion on, and spent the day riding around in a Jeep with the top off and got sunburnt very bad. But that one was on Explorer of the Seas.
We just got back from the ABC Islands. I mean, literally like 2 days ago. Yeah, we had done our honeymoon in Aruba a long time ago. But we didn't cruise there. We did a land trip, and then we just celebrated our anniversary in October, and so we decided to go on a cruise to Aruba, and yeah, I went to Aruba, Bonaire, Curacao, Grand Cayman. So yeah, I loved Aruba. We went on Celebrity.
See, I haven't done a Celebrity yet, but that's on our list.
Yeah, I love Celebrity. Yeah, that's some nice. Anything else? That's some nice collection of cruises.
The thing I would say for most memorable that is that's kind of funny to me anyway. I growing up in small towns up until 7 years ago when I moved to Oklahoma City, I find it very humorous how I can be hundreds, if not thousands of miles away and still run into somebody that I might not necessarily know, but they know family members. I actually met somebody on, I believe it was Icon, that was friends with my wife's cousin. And actually, I'll say this was kind of a small world scenario. Our very first cruise, ran into a couple, and I vaguely remembered them. I wouldn't have picked them out of a crowd, but I just vaguely had a recollection of them. And fast forward to April on our second cruise, we run into them again. I should say, actually, they ran into my wife and recognized my wife and said, "Hey, weren't you on our last cruise?" So she pointed them out to me later on, and I went over, I was talking with them, and come to find out they lived 3 blocks from us, and his brother was my neighbor. There was one house between me and his brother. I thought, wow, that is a small world, and our kids knew each other, and we ended up doing another cruise with them later on. I think that was Allure of the Seas.
You know, speaking of coincidences, I started to say this when we first started, but then I said, yeah, it's a coincidence, but no one cares about this but me. But since you brought up coincidences, so you're from Oklahoma, obviously interviewing you for an upcoming show. Earlier today, I interviewed someone else from Oklahoma for an upcoming show. So, in fact, you might have heard of their story. It's a family. No, they're in Tulsa. What part did you say? What part of Oklahoma you're in?
Oklahoma City.
Okay, they're in Tulsa, and it's a family that on a cruise. It was actually a cruise to Alaska. And it was a cruise ship excursion they went on, which I always tell people. Now, I probably will never tell people this again. If you're pretty new to cruising, always take a cruise ship excursion because you'll never be left behind. Well, that was not true for this couple. They were on a cruise ship excursion. A long story, but they got left behind, and it made international news. I remember when it happened. I remember reading about it, like in mainstream, not cruise news, but in mainstream newspapers all over the world were covered it. I mean, I interviewed her today, and she told me she got asked to be on all of these television shows, Good Morning America, whatever. I can't remember all of them, but so just a coincidence talking to two upcoming podcast guests from Oklahoma in the same day.
Yeah, I don't think I even heard that story. I'm gonna have to look it up.
Yeah. When I start promoting it, which is going to be very soon, maybe tomorrow. I can't remember when her episode airs, but I have like a collage of newspaper articles in different places that covered the story.
But I will definitely agree with you on. I highly recommend all newbies take cruise ship excursions, because that was something that we stuck to very strict until just recently, and we started exploring a little bit on islands that we've been to repeatedly. We'll kind of venture a little bit to ourselves, but still don't trust it a whole lot in certain islands until we get the hang of it.
Let's talk about the Cruising Duck Man brand. So who came up with the name? I mean, I know you kind of said you wanted to do it to separate your presence from your personal on Facebook, but who's the name? Did you come up with it, or your wife?
Yeah, I came up with it. We were actually sitting in the bed on the Icon when my wife suggested that I make a separate Facebook page for it. And then I was kind of thinking, what was I going to do? And then I originally made the Cruising Duck Man. And then I changed it and added Cris to it because I seen that there was a few people that kind of had the same, the Cruising Duck Man name or something similar. And I thought, well, I want to stand out because I want to just, be my own person. And so that's kind of where it started from. I'm fairly active on a lot of social media. Mostly Facebook pages for the cruising pages, and then individual sailings that I'm going to do. I've actually made 2 posts today on this upcoming one that I've got going on.
Now, are you prominent in that group, the Cruising Duck group? I mentioned the article that Matt did for Royal Caribbean Blog, and that's where I learned about this huge Cruising Ducks community, almost 300,000 people, and of course you were in the blog as well. Are you in that group?
I am on it on my personal page because they do not allow essentially a fake page, a additional page to be in the group. And then there's a Royal Caribbean Duck page also, and I was on that on my Cris the Cruising Duck Man. And then I actually, overzealous Facebook admin had actually told me I couldn't be on there with my, fake account, as he calls it. And so I just kind of shy away from the big groups. I mean, I can get on and look stuff up on my personal side of stuff, but I don't know. I like the smaller groups that are a little more personal, where I know a lot of people who are kind of in the duck community that I associate with, and get more of a one-on-one type feel with a lot of them groups.
Now with the big groups, do they know of you? I mean, are you considered the king of ducks?
I don't necessarily think that. I think there's, on the carnival side of stuff, there's a few people that I know that are very prominent in it. We have sailed carnival, and we prefer Royal. And so on the Royal side of stuff, I'm probably, up there in the top of the guys, I would assume. I try to stay pretty active and kind of keep up on the Royal stuff. But yeah, as far as the entire community, I know there's a few other people that I associate with that are very, very big on them. I don't know as far as how many cruises they do. I like to keep the way I do my stuff a little more traditional. I know there's a few guys who will host an event where basically they stick a box out there and they're like, come pick a duck off the table and throw one of your ducks in there. And I don't like to do that. I like to hide my ducks on the ship just like anybody else. I also like a guy reached out to me actually back in August or September, that created a new app called Sea Ducks. And he was just going live with it right before I was getting on the Carnival Mardi Gras. And he was getting on the icon and asked if I would kind of help him with trying it out and give him some feedback, stuff like that. And so that's a whole nother level of duck hiding, where you can use the app and you take a photo of it and you can put what floor you hit on it. You can put some hints if you want. You post it, and then other people on the app will see it, and then they got to go try to find it. And that was a great experience. I'm kind of excited to try it again now that a lot of the bugs have been worked out and it's been live for a few months. So, but between the traditional way and the app, that's kind of how I like to do it.
Are you kind of considered a collaborator, or it was just kind of a favor, a one-time thing?
We'll be right back.
Do you ever feel like your kids are speaking a foreign language? We did too.
Did you give up on foreign language in high school, like we did?
Come to hang out with your slang out, and we can help you translate some of those words that the kids are saying to you. From skibbity to riz, all the way to sigma. We'll cover all the words you want to know and all the words you wish you hadn't asked about.
Consider us your guides and soon-to-be friends who will help you take this journey from YouTube to all your favorite streaming services. This is Dan.
And I'm Matt. And we hope you come hang out
with your slang out.
It was kind of a favor. He did make me an admin on the app to kind of help out. Super nice guy. I've never actually met him in person, but in fact, just today he sent me. I got in the mail a bunch of lanyards with ducks on them, with the sea ducks on it, to give out on the next cruise. So,
Oh, that was nice.
yeah, he's a super nice guy, and he was trying to develop the app to be another level to the duck hiding experience, where you can make it a game if you want, compete against your family members, get rankings, stuff like that. And so for the duck hiding and hunting, I think that's a great added tool to the traditional way.
It sounds like it's kind of developing a life of its own. It's got an app now. But what else is happening in the duck hiding world? What's on the horizon? Anything new and different?
Well, I mean, I'm always trying to create new stuff and different stuff for each cruise. One of the reasons I do stay on a lot of the big pages is I like to see what other people are doing and sometimes get ideas from it, and I'll kind of change up some stuff. And I just a couple months ago started 3D printing some ducks that I put lights in that hang on your lanyard if a person wants to, have their lanyard with their CPass card and a light up duck on, stuff like that. But
I get the sense, Chris, you get a lot of fun out of this. I mean, it's almost what I get out. Well, not almost. It could be the same I get out of podcasting. You sound very passionate, and I know I am about what I do.
Yeah, because I mean, I work a lot of hours. Being self-employed, I'm gone a lot, and when I'm home, I just want to kind of come in here and unwind and do my thing.
That's your release. That's your drug of choice.
Yes.
I like that. So let me ask you this. In my intro, I mentioned that your foray into 3D printing. You talked about how you bought that one inexpensive printer, and I think you said you've gone up to like 6. Talk about that. So are you now a 3D printing expert?
Well, I would not say an expert at all. I consider myself still to be kind of novice in my own experience, but I do get a lot of people that'll hit me up for questions and stuff. But yeah, I mean, I kind of went from the one that was under $200 to the one my wife bought me that was, $6 or $7, to the next one was $1,700.
Holy cow.
And that particular, I actually have kind of got onto Bamboo Labs brand, and that's kind of where I'm at. And I don't think anytime soon I'm switching away from that brand, but now I've got 3 of the Bamboo brands. I've got 2 Enders. I got 1 Quiddy. And then I have another brand in the garage that was actually given to me by a company, an oil field company that I do some work for. They had it in their office and they couldn't get it to work. And so they gave it to me, and I said, well, I'll play with it, and I'm going to make them some stuff in return.
They gave it to you. I guess they knew what you did.
Yeah, because I had actually made some little sample little oil rigs with the company logo on it and gave them to them.
Okay.
That's outside of the ducks. I've done a few little sample things to give out to customers, but 99% of everything I do is duck or duck related on my printers. But yeah, they gave me a big one that they kind of messed up, and they asked me some pointers a few months back on how to fix it, and I kind of told him what I suggested. And then he actually, last time I was in there, he's like, you can have this thing. He asked me later if if I could make some things for him and then he doesn't even have to mess with a printer. And I said, yeah, no problem. And kind of gave him my input. So I do have a 7th printer, but it's not up and going, and I haven't even had time to mess with it. But
So when you're really if you're going on a cruise, or do you do like shows or any exhibitions? I mean, do you ever have all those printers really running together, and it's just you just stylistically pick one at a time, one over the other because of a certain style duck?
I typically have 4 running that are in my room because I can't put too many in here without starting to worry about overloading my electric.
Okay,
But
okay.
because they have a heater on the bed that is on to keep the bed at a certain temperature, plus it's melting the PLA filament at the same time. So with 4 of them, I figured I'm good here. And each printer I feel like does a better job with different ducks and different styles. And I've kind of figured that out through trial and error. So I have those. I have one in my son's room, and he will make some ducks for me occasionally. When he wants to, I guess I should say. But then the other one's in the garage, and then I did retire one recently that I just got tired of replacing parts on, and it was a cheaper one, so I wasn't concerned about it.
Let me say to the listeners, I did mention to the listeners in the introduction that, I was kind of, I shrugged my shoulders at the whole cruising duck trend, and I don't, I don't hide ducks or look for ducks or anything, but I understand the popularity. Then I started reading articles beyond cruise news. It was starting to catch people's attention beyond cruising. And I read a couple of articles, and then I read Matt's blog post, which was really, really informative. And so I learned a lot. And, being Facebook friends, I would see your designs, and I was very impressed. I said, we've come a long way from the dollar store ducks and the Amazon, the bulk ducks. But what really did it for me, Chris, was, you asked me for my address, and then I get this package, and it's a duck with the joy of cruising emblazoned on it. And that whole day, I was smiling from ear to ear. I was so proud of my duck with the joy of cruising on it. So when I start promoting your episode, which is going to be soon, I'm going to make sure to take a picture of my little podcast area and show the prominent placement of my joy of cruising duck. But so tell us about what goes into, you've kind of alluded to it, preparing for and transporting and hiding ducks on the ship. Sounds like you've got something that most of us, something extra to prepare for that most of us don't. What's that process like for you?
Well, I mean, first step is convincing my wife that we need to take less clothes and more ducks. So I have learned how to pack and not overpack clothes and unnecessary stuff in order to be able to take more ducks. I will say that. I actually just did a little funny YouTube video on my YouTube. It's the Cris the Cruising Duck Man YouTube deal. I just started that, so I will caution anybody, I'm not a professional at that at all. I just had a lot of people asking me questions, and I thought, I could address these in a YouTube channel, and that would be kind of easier for me. But generally, my wife and I, because we fly out of Oklahoma, our airport, Southwest, is our prominent main airline, so we each take 2 bags, and I have the biggest suitcases I can get. And I will fill 2 of them at least completely full of ducks. Even once we get our clothes packed in the others, I'll still find some room to wedge some stuff in. And there's been a lot of times where we had to go ahead and take a carry-on so we could get the rest of our clothes in. But TSA loves me. I can't tell you the number of times I've opened my luggage and there's been a little card in there that says that they went through my luggage. So I know my wife said she'll no longer pack clothes in the same bag as my ducks because they will take everything out. And she's had stuff that she took, like for the white night on the cruise ship. She had a white blouse that had dirt all over it after they had taken it out. So she was a little upset with me, I think, but it all worked out. As far as the cruise ships, I don't think, at least I don't know anyway, that they've ever really taken too hard of a look at my luggage. If they did, maybe they took a souvenir duck out. I would have never known. Yeah, I mean, traveling with the ducks is definitely a chore. I always have to weigh my bags. I actually addressed this on one of my videos the other day, where the stuff that I'm making and taking on the ships to give away, I will do less of an infill on them so they don't weigh as much, so that I don't go overweight on my suitcases. But the stuff that we make to sell on the website, I do a standard infill on them for strength and all that.
So infill, that's just the technical word for it, like the core of the duck, the interior.
Yeah, kind of a webbing on the inside for stability and strength.
Now, I know that you've given cruise ducks to cruise line personnel. Talk about that. Do many know you?
I really didn't think so until, I want to say last spring. I was on a cruise out of Galveston, and the room stewardess had I put a magnet on my door that I had 3D printed that says Chris the Cruising Duck Man, and I had a duck on it. And when she was standing in the hall when I put it out there, and she instantly looked at it, and her face got like an expression on it, kind of an excited expression. And she made a phone call and asked me, she says, I have somebody that has been asking in our group meeting or group message or whatever it was, that said that you were supposed to be on the ship and wanted to know if anybody knows where I'm at, if they could let her know, and she wanted to get a photo with me. So I thought that was kind of an eye opener, that I was kind of surprised that anybody, I would say that was kind of my first time where I really met anybody that actually even knew who I was. So my kids now, I get a little irritated with me sometimes because I will generally carry a backpack full of ducks with me all around the ship and just constantly hiding them. And so I'll get a lot of people that'll come up and say hi and everything, but it doesn't take long for people, staff included, to figure out who I am. Keep an eye for where I'm putting stuff down.
What's the most common question you get asked?
I definitely would say what type of 3D printer I recommend. That's probably one of my main questions I get asked a lot, which I kind of touched on that earlier, the Bamboo brand. For user friendly, they actually make one now that's $199 that I have sitting right beside me, that is actually a great little starter. I did the whole video on which ones I have, and I am not sponsored by anybody. I will tell you that right off the bat. I just like to give my advice because trial and error. I've gone down that route. And
now, do they know of you? You should contact them, Chris.
I never have contacted them, to be honest with you. I just kind of one of those that when I bought the first printer, I bought their best one they had at the time, which was my $1,700 one. And I've actually, each one I bought since has been a lesser model, just to kind of get them all. And I like them because they're user friendly. The software's free. I can start them and run them from my phone. All I have to do is call home and tell one of my kids to go take a duck off the printer, and I can start a new one as soon as they clear it off. So that's kind of great. But
send them an email and give them the link to this podcast when it comes out shortly, and tell them you gave them a lot of play. It went to 124 countries, so they ought to give you something back.
I'll have to tell them.
Talk about your proudest moment as Cris the Cruising Duck.
I actually was telling my son about this the other day when I was kind of going over some stuff with him. And I was walking. I honestly don't even remember what ship it was either. But I was walking across the promenade. I was just about to the elevators. And there wasn't a lot of people out there. And I seen a lady kind of standing off to the side. And she was on the phone. And she was looked devastated. If I had to guess, I would not. I don't really want to speculate. I don't know the lady's name, nothing. But if I had to guess, something bad had happened. Maybe someone passed away. I don't know. But she was in tears, and I stopped. I got a duck out of my bag, and I told her, I said, "You can't be sad with a duck," or something to that effect. I don't remember. And she just said thank you, and I went on my way. And a couple days later, at the time I didn't even recognize the lady. She came up to me, and because when I first seen her, she was on the phone and she was crying. The second time she came up to me and gave me a hug and told me, she says, "You don't know how much that meant to me at that time." That kind of stuck with me. I thought, that small act of kindness, that was probably one of my best moments.
That's that touching story.
And I do try to I've actually got two ducks made that were kind of personalized for this upcoming sailing. Someone reached out to me, and one lady, her grandson had passed away, and she has his duck collection, and so she just asked, and I shouldn't even say she reached out to me, because she really did. She commented on one of my posts and asked said she'd really like to get one for his duck collection. And so I messaged her and said, "Hey," I said, what's their name?" And I made a duck for that collection. And then on a separate note, another guy had reached out to me that his mom had just beat pancreatic cancer, I believe, and was going to be on that sailing and wanted to know if there was any way I could make a duck. So I came up with an idea of how I wanted to do that. And she has 6 grandkids. So I made a duck. I put the little pink ribbon on it, and then I made 6 little ducks to go around it that I printed all as a one-piece deal. And so little things like that I try to occasionally do. It gets a little hard to try to pack specialty ducks for individuals, because then I have to try to track them down. It cuts into my family time also. And my family complains enough that I'm always out running around doing the ducks. I'll miss shows sometimes. Try to do my best, but it keeps me busy, and I very much enjoy it.
Great. Well, it's wonderful to hear, anytime I hear of someone who has found their passion. And I know that you had some challenges, before you started cruising, that kind of indirectly led you to cruising, and then that led you to making ducks. And
it's kind of funny, because my best friend growing up, he's very tech savvy. He's the one that I've reached out to a lot for some help. And his business makes the shirts that we have on our website. He actually had kind of told me, he said, "Growing up, I never thought in my wildest dreams that you would be addicted to cruising." He says, "and let alone 3D printing rubber ducks for cruises." And I actually had kind of told him, I said, "I never did either, but to touch on my, my life story there, shortly after I had moved to Oklahoma, I got in a bad wreck. I was driving down the highway, and a semi came through a blind hillside, and his road teed into the highway, and he was going at full speed, so he was going to crash regardless. But he came right through, took me out, and I was pulling a big trailer at the time, and I was in my F450. It sheared the cab off the truck, kind of rolled up underneath the trailer, The absolute only spot anybody would have survived was the driver's seat. Somehow my driver's seat broke straight back, and I was just kind of laid in there, and the whole passenger side rolled up around the truck. It was bad enough that I questioned a couple weeks later why nobody had asked me a single question. I finally got a chance to talk to the trooper, and I asked him, I said, I thought it was really odd that nobody bothered to ask me not a single question outside of the medical help who life flighted me back to Oklahoma City. And the trooper had actually told me, he says, well, honestly, we wrote it up as a fatality wreck because we didn't think there was any way you would have survived. And ultimately, I came out with fairly minor injuries. I had some broken bones, broken femur, sternum, ribs, stuff like that, and some nerve damage, but no major issues there. It was one of those that anybody who actually seen it just cannot believe that anybody would have survived. I was conscious through the whole thing, and
for him to tell you, well, we just kind of wrote it up as a fatality. Wow.
Yeah. He said that by the time he got news that I actually survived, he said he had already figured everything out. That was when I learned that vehicles have a little black box in them that they can pull a lot of data out of. Plus for me, because I was going well under the speed limit and the semi driver was going well over the speed limit. Plus he blew through a stop sign. But yeah, I mean, it was one of those that for a good 6 months, doing physical therapy and all that, trying to get back to, with my injuries and the stuff that I did have, it took me a while. I couldn't walk. I had to go through that physical therapy to build up the leg muscle for where my femur broke, and it kind of tore up my leg a little bit, but kind of gave me a new look on life. And I decided, I want to start traveling more, do some more vacations. Your comment about how you thought it was a phase that was going to kind of pass and fade out. June, on our Liberty of the Seas going to Bermuda, I ran into Matt from Royal Caribbean Blog in the casino, and he was talking to a guy. I gave Matt a duck, and I got a photo. I think you've seen the photo. Well, the gentleman he was speaking to, I was talking with also, and I met him a few other times throughout the ship and on the island. And he actually told me he was a member of a group that kind of made fun of the cruising ducks. And I have a sense of humor, so I don't get offended. I enjoy everybody. If you like it, if you don't like it, it's kind of whatever you do like. But anyway, by the end of this cruise, I gave him a couple ducks, and he was actually happy. And I made a comment. I said, "See, I told you I'd convert you over to someone who likes the ducks."
Yeah, he sounds like me on the day my duck came from UPS, and I had no idea what was in it. I kind of had forgotten about you had asked me for my address, and so I'm an Amazon orderer. I order from Amazon like crazy, but there were no Amazon markings on it. So I said, "What is this?" And like I told you, you wouldn't believe how much I grinned and how proud I am of my duck. So let's talk about the future. What do you have booked? And I know you have a lot because I'm on your I'm a Facebook friend, as I mentioned.
Touched on a minute ago, we got Utopia of the Seas, December 9th, I believe. Getting to see how they decorate the big ships for Christmas. So then we have, Navigator of the Seas in January out of Los Angeles, going to Cabo and Puerto Vallarta and one or two other places I can't remember. Then we have Symphony of the Seas in March. Sister-in-law and my niece with us on that one. And I say taking as in my wife and I both get casino offers, so I'll book a room, she'll book a room, and we'll take people, and then they get their own room when we get our room. So I try to be generous, but I'm not that generous to just be handing out cruises at full price. So then we have Oasis of the Seas, which will be my that'll be in June, I believe. And my oldest son and his best friend are coming with us again. That's the one he got instantly hooked this last summer. Said, "Hey, I want to go again." And because he's in college, we booked that one. we're also going to meet up with some other people from Oklahoma that we met early spring on a cruise. That one is going to, I believe, St. Thomas.
Wow, what a slate of Royal Caribbean cruises. Well, enjoy. You know, I'm sure we'll have you back, and you can kind of give us the goods on all of those top royal ships. But before we let you go, I always ask a couple of light or fun cruise questions, and then perhaps what I call an oddball question, because it doesn't have to do with cruising. So the first question, it's an easy one, but I get a lot of great ideas. What's your favorite cruise drink and cruise food?
I try any and everything I can. Sometimes I'll walk up to the bar not knowing what I want, and I'll see somebody drinking something, and I'll say, "What is that?" "Oh, I'll take one. Let me try it." But something I think that I enjoy the most about cruising with a drink option is because my job, I'm on call 24/7, so I don't have the privilege of, if I want to indulge in an adult beverage at home, I very rarely can. But so when I'm on a cruise, I will kind of let loose a little bit, and I'm on vacation. I'm responsible, but sometimes I'll get up in the morning and go get me an iced coffee with Kahlua. So that's something that I kind of look forward to when I go on a cruise. I'm like, just on a sea day, that's a great thing to do.
How about food? You have any cruise traditions? Things you only eat on a cruise?
I can't think of anything that I only eat on a cruise. I am not a picky eater. For the people that have seen me, they can probably guess that. So I've never been one that gets real picky. I do love seafood. My wife does not, so that's something that I do enjoy on a cruise, is being able to get my seafood.
Are you a specialty restaurant guy?
Not all that often. We will occasionally book it. Like on Utopia, we have the Royal Railway booked. Super excited for that. I think on Icon we booked Hook. That was a good place to go to get some lobster tail that I enjoyed.
Yeah, I loved Hooked.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that. We always try to, especially if there's something different, like on Wonder, we tried the mason jar. We try to get those oddball specialty. I don't get super anxious to book just one of the standard specialty restaurants. We do tend to just go with the flow.
All right. Second question. What's your most wonderful, memorable, funniest, or even most embarrassing cruise or port experience?
Well, I would definitely say memorable would be the time that my wife and I got sunburned. She got miserably sunburned in Aruba. But
that's with the Jeeps.
Yeah, that was definitely fun.
The oddball question. You have a large following, so welcome to the Cris the Cruising Duckman fans, as well as your friends and family listening. Share one thing, Cris, that my listeners and your fans and followers don't know about Cris.
Well, I would say they know it now, but I was going to say that we didn't start cruising until 2021. So the end of 2021. So in few short years here, we've really gotten carried away. I'm still a diehard Nebraska Cornhusker fan from being born in Nebraska, and I was raised there when I was little, and then we kind of moved away. But I would say some people don't know about me, but I do wear a Nebraska hat.
Well, Cris, thank you so much for coming on the Joy of Cruising podcast. I think it's great that you have a passion that involves bringing joy to other people. That's one of the best passions to have. Continued all the best to you. Like I said, we want you to come back on the show, and so like I said, we're Facebook friends, so we'll be in touch. As I like to say to guests, we'll see you on the ocean.
Thank you for allowing me to have my first podcast experience with you on this podcast. Been enjoyable. I've never done one before and was extremely nervous before coming on. So I want to thank you for making it where I wasn't so nervous.
The Joy of Cruising and Cruising Interrupted, each $16.99 plus shipping, and new release, The Joy of Cruising Again, for $18.99, can be ordered at the link on thejoyofcruisingpodcast.com. For each of the 3 books, use the discount code Joy of Cruising Podcast and get $4 off. The Joy of Cruising books are also available at Amazon. Order the ebook at Amazon or your favorite online retailer. Stay in touch by joining the Joy of Cruising Podcast Facebook group or following the Joy of Cruising Podcast on Instagram. We're constantly adding new shows. Please leave a review and tell a friend about us. We hope you enjoyed this brief escape to the ocean. See you next week.